Hello and welcome to the Utropeia podcast. I am your host, Ken. I'm part of the Racers from Kentown, and here's my song. Doodah. Doodah.
I get it.
It ain't funny, but I get it. Hello, you are listening to the Utropeia podcast, the podcast where we talk about... What do we talk about here? Tropes?
Yeah.
I think so. What is that?
Oh, I thought we talked about ropes.
Oh.
Oh.
If you were redirected here from the Utropeia podcast, then
That's when they just talk about not looking backwards in hell.
I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna give you a little one because everyone gets one.
That was easy.
That was
All right,
easy.
good. Thank you.
That was easy.
That was easy.
Off to a good start.
If you've never heard this before, this is probably the most
sorry.
interesting minute you've listened to. We're also sorry. This is a podcast where we talk about tropes. There's a lot of in-jokes. We'll keep you up as we go along. But hey, let's talk about who else is in the room besides me, Ken, a.k.a. Pumpken. But I change my name every week because I guess that's funny. No one's told me to stop. So, fuck it. We'll go right above me to Chris Moonjump!
Moonjump!
Hey.
I don't have a thing this week. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Been busy on the moon.
It's been super busy on the moon. You know what else is busy?
Clearly, this dialogue. I have to tell you.
Oh,
Man,
well, it's Bill,
we
Mr.
blew
U
it all
Video.
What?
That really got
What
you.
just happened?
You're freaking out right now.
I lost my shit.
Will you please let me introduce Bill, Mr. U Video?
I'm not
That's
stopping
fine.
you. It's wonderful, Bill.
It's cool. How's it going?
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hello.
Hey, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. Hey, how are you, Anna Cranberry?
Can you dig it?
Can't Cran, dig it! It's an ocean spray of sound. But shall move on over for our next guest, Todd Ogredose.
Welcome to SeaWorld?
No, I believe you mean welcome to Waterworld.
Welcome to
Yes.
Kevin Costner?
Half an hour. It's Seeker, aka Dimmsdale.
Yay! Hi. I should do a pun too. I left Dim's chip at home. It's just me.
What?
Your jokes are getting stale.
Oh, the light is getting so dims in here. I don't know.
Do I press
Dim's
the
to
that
break.
was easy button?
I please do, because I'd like to apologize in the
That
form
was
of...
easy.
Yep, in the form of that was easy.
Let's do that a couple times.
Apologize.
Okay.
Stop it!
Yeah, just
God
for the
and
rest of the episode. Okay, so a part of this podcast, if you've never listened before, or if you're a usual listener, just, move along with me, please. Just let me get through this. Come on.
Good job starting on episode 21.
Let me have it. It's legal
Dummies.
now. They didn't know what they were getting into. It's technically the 22nd, but we won't get too into that.
Technically, it's the
Well, right, today it is,
yeah.
but I'm going to cut that out because they can't figure out when we record.
Oh shit! I'm
So
sorry.
I'm leaving everything else in besides the date so they don't know.
Oh, sorry.
What a confusing episode this must be for our
It's
listeners.
like a train robbery,
Ooh.
which I'm excited for this week.
Excited
I mean-
for a trailer? Terrible thing to be excited for.
I'm excited. Why? Think of all the money I'm going to get.
Oh, you're robbing a train. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, thought it was just you knew one was occurring.
Well, yeah, the one that I'm going to rob.
That's true. Good call.
You're gonna steal from Snowpiercer.
Yeah. I love Snowpiercer. That's such a good movie.
need to
Go
see it.
out. You should see it. I bought the comic. It's so different. It's so different from the movie.
Oh, is it based on a comic?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's I don't know where it originates from. I want to say it's European, maybe Belgian, maybe French. It's a very international film. Really good though. Like I said, the book and the movie are completely different. The main character in the book is nowhere in the movie. It's nowhere in there. It's nuts. I'm also excited to play Five Nights at Freddy's tomorrow and stream it for everyone.
Oh, God.
So that should be That should be fun.
I'm excited to listen to Anna play Five Nights at Freddy's.
I'm going to play that.
You're going to
damn
watch me play it,
game.
and you're gonna hate me the whole time. Because I'm gonna be like, I don't want to check that room. And I'll just sit there.
I take that it's a scary game.
Yeah, it's so scary.
Oh, so scary.
Do you want me to give you a synopsis, Todd?
By all means, please.
It's like Night Trap.
Yeah, it is like
that
Night
means
Trap.
it's the best
Yeah.
game ever.
You play in a haunted Chuck E. Cheese, but it's called Freddy Fazbear's, and you're a
Sounds amazing already.
it's already great. You're a security guard. You make sure you pretty much watch these animatronic figures get up at night, but they think that you are a skeleton of an animatronic suit and that you're outside of your suit, so they're gonna shove you in. But the problem is that will kill you if it happens, because there are parts that don't go where human parts are supposed to be. So while you're in the watch room, making sure nothing happens to the suits, they get up and wander around, and you only have limited power to check on them and close the doors to your little watch area. So the game is pretty much Night Trap, where you look
Sounds
around.
Amazing.
It's Wait to be Murdered, the game.
Yeah, it's
Oh, I can't wait to see a demonic Jasper T. Jowls.
Jasper T. Jones.
I think that's in Pirates Cove. You'll figure that out later when you watch my
Yes.
playthrough.
No.
And other news on that, that is what I based the comic on this week for. So
That for what? What comic?
uh-huh.
That of which we must not say.
Please don't make us say that.
Hey now.
For in strange swamps, even deaths may die.
In darkest swamp.
Darkest swamp, death may die. Hey, what are you excited
Darkest
for?
donkey.
What are you excited for, Anna Cranberry?
Hey.
Hey, you're just excited to say hi?
I'm excited for the state fair.
Yay!
I'm gonna see lots of aminals and feed some goats.
You gonna feed some goats?
One might punch me.
Like last year.
Just like last year. Yeah.
No one's gonna get that reference except you and me, because we saw it
What do you
happen.
need to know? I got punched by a
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
straightforward.
seems fair.
I like how you guys jumped to my
Yeah,
defense.
it's fine.
What's not to get?
My only curiosity.
Punched by a goat.
I mean, punch kind of implies front legs. Like, did it get up?
It was.
It-
Oh, damn.
no,
It
that
was a
directly.
front leg punch.
She tried to feed
It-
carrots to goats, and one of them
was very aggressive.
was
Got it.
very bossy
It was a bossy goat.
and wanted that carrot
I see.
a little bit.
I don't think it was like particularly angry. I think it was just a goddamn goat.
It is just a goddamn goat.
You know what?
I think
They're just
all
kids.
that way.
Oh, it's true.
There you go.
Yeah, there you are. Hey, Saker, what are you excited about?
Bleh.
Or bummed out about, if you want to, do that.
I'm never bummed out about anything. Nintendo is having a Nintendo 3DS Direct tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Presumably
Okay.
there'll be more Smash Brothers information, which
Yay.
I'm so
Yay.
hype on Smash Brothers ever since that leak happened. Yeah.
What leak?
Oh,
Maybe they'll finally release that a certain red-capped baseball-playing
Robot?
boy
It's
might
true.
show up.
wait. If you're not
Why
familiar,
did you fill in robot?
yeah.
Everyone loves Base
That's
Wars.
a weird. The leak had a bunch of. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but the leak had a bunch of characters and gameplay footage from the DS version. So somebody clearly escaped Nintendo with the DS version,
Ah.
and I mean they leaked a bunch of amazing looking characters. I'm really excited.
Tell me later.
You're really exciting. I'm on the edge
We
of my
think
seat
so.
listening to you.
So I'm psyched to see if they confirm it, even though we already know that's true. What else? Oh, and also, Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 5 came out today, so I'm psyched to play that eventually, even though I'm super busy for the next few days.
What?
I know.
Thank you for telling me. Holy
I
shit.
know, right? It's over now, and I'm so excited to see what happens. So that's it. That's all I'm excited for.
Doing this weekend.
Hey, Todd.
Those?
Excited?
I'm excited for Nintendo stuff too.
Yeah.
Particularly the Mario Kart DLC that's going to be
yes.
coming out.
You down with DLC?
Yeah.
You know me. Did we? I feel like we've already done this joke.
Nope.
That was
But-
easy.
It's a repeat joke.
But yeah, the Link is gonna be a playable character, and some Animal Crossing characters, and the Blue Falcon from F-Zero going to be a cart.
Did you say the
Oh,
Blue
is
Falcon?
it?
It's the Blue Falcon.
Did you see?
I'm sad it's not White Falcon. That one's fabulous.
They
Oh,
there's an
okay.
F-Zero track too that they released as well.
Oh,
And-
is there? I know there's
Awesome.
gonna be a couple Hyrule ones, but in fact, one of them is like one of the new cups is just like the Triforce
That's
cup.
awesome.
Yay!
But yeah, the other cup I
Yeah.
think is just Nintendo Classics because I know it's one of them is
Oh, it's
F-Zero,
gonna be so
one of them is
cool.
Animal Crossing, and one of them is Excite Bike.
Oh,
Excite.
my
I'm so excited for that,
goodness. Oh, I'm
Excite.
even
Excite
more
bike.
excited now.
Excite.
I am excite biked. So very excite biked.
And a lot of people think that's going to cross over with the amiibo stuff that they're releasing for Smash Brothers, which is really cool.
Yeah, and they could do that because the villager is going to be one of them in Link.
Yeah.
So those are bound to be two of
Yep,
the
yep.
amiibos. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be so cool. There's going to be 16 new tracks in total.
Yeah, but
too.
did you see the release dates,
So-
which are kind of a bummer?
Yeah, it's like November is one of them,
And then May.
I forget when the other.
I know,
Oh.
right?
May.
Unbelievable.
You're
That was easy.
you're unbelievable.
Oh.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you. BM up next is Bill, Mr. U Video.
What?
Waking
What's
up
going
from-
on?
Have you woken up from a mine shaft?
It's sad that that's sacred.
I
But,
get it, because I'm sick.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
I feel like
Because
this
he's
flew over my
he's
head.
skunked down a
I'm
mine
skank
shaft.
cast down a mine shaft.
Stanky skank ass down a mine shaft.
Go on.
I don't know. I haven't. Not a lot's been going on for me. I finished reading one of my books.
Yeah.
Joe Murray's book, creating animated cartoons with character. It was actually more about pitching an idea to a studio than about making cartoons, but it was still really interesting. It had a lot of stories about when he was working on Rocco and Camp Laszlo.
Whoa, I didn't know he made both of those.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very
Okay.
good.
Well, now I see it. My terrible pumpkin eyes are
See
carved open. And I see
To be fair,
everything.
one's a lot cuter than the other.
Yeah.
Bless you.
I was a lot more skilled with the first one, and then I did the other one
Well,
with my
and
left
the
hand.
thing that I never knew was that Tom Kenny was Heifer.
Yep.
Because it's
Yeah.
very not
It's
Tom
directly-
Kenny.
No
It's
way.
directly him.
And that was his first voice role, like his first
Oh, I didn't know that.
breakthrough
That's
voice
cool.
role.
That's fantastic.
When
I
he
didn't
wasn't
know
on
that.
Mr. Show.
Well, like that's because Joe Murray talks about actually that he used to go around to like stand-up shows
Okay.
and like improv shows to look for voice actors because he preferred comedians as voice actors over actors as voice actors.
That explains a lot of OhioCon panels I've been to. Yeah.
Yes.
Woo! But up next,
But
Chris Moonjump.
Oh boy.
What's making you jump?
All right. Well, you make me wanna
Jump.
jump. Oh.
might as well jump.
Jump. So hard.
Well, being as they actually released some new information on the 3DS game Fantasy Life, which
yeah.
is being done by Level 5, I decided to finally, crack open Ni no Kuni after buying it cheap months ago.
You got that Ni no Kuni?
Yeah. So I've
Yeah.
been playing through it, which is a game that kind of feeds into my addictions because you have both completionist menus for side quests and monster collection elements, and they evolve, so I have to catch them all.
I get it.
Sounds so
But
familiar.
it does.
Like
but
Kingdom
it's-
Hearts.
Hey, don't judge my obsessions. It's-
You're my obsession.
Besides that, the other one I'm kind of excited to play through here is I believe it's 4A Games that does the Metro series, actually released the Redux collection of Metro 2033 and Last Light.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited to kind of play through them again here because I don't know, it's very interesting to finally get a story from a very different perspective because it's actually based on Russian literature. So, and it is definitely very Russian.
The
So-
apocalypse in Russia? Terrible? You don't say. It's already Russia.
Russia,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, our Russian listeners. I'm so sorry. Please don't come at me with Kalashnikovs.
Or, dash cams and axes and everything else they
Or
keep in
with
their
your-
car.
I
Yeah.
like the idea of coming at you with dash cams.
I like the idea of them
They've just got
just
the-
rushing at you with those dash cams. The-
This guy, he gets it.
Sacred, we're just stalling right now for the main part of our show, which is talking about the Wild West, or Old West.
Just transitioned from Russia into the Wild West.
It's a
Yeah.
very lateral move.
Like to mention you just slap fighting.
I live in pain and fear
It's
every
called
day.
clapping.
So, when I talk about the Old West, what do you usually think of? What characters, usually... What characters, like, what's the setting? Is there, like, a specific town or time of day that usually comes to your mind? I'm going to start with Bill, Mr. U Video.
Oh, not me. Actually, a lot of this is one that actually things flood to mind.
Yeah.
I guess one of the first things, and I'm probably gonna steal it from somebody, would be the Dollars trilogy.
The Dollars
Yeah.
trilogy.
Fistful of Dollars, A Few More Dollars, and then The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Oh, my gosh.
That's kind of the Western in my mind, anyway. Well, spaghetti Western especially, but
I love spaghetti.
yeah, that's just
There was a kind of a joke there.
Why can't I just talk about what I like, you guys?
Well,
yeah. I just assumed that was a sincere declaration of love.
Excited that part.
I did not question that at all.
He's just ready to drop bombs, but he keeps on spinning.
My knees are weak and my arms are heavy. What's this? My sweater? Oh God, what's happening? Okay. But no. So, can you talk a little bit about the Dollars trilogy for a little bit? Like, what's the sort of
I guess
what kind of
It
characters
is,
are in there?
it's 9 hours long.
Okay.
Yes, when I want people
I think
to
that's the
describe
first
things
thing you
to me,
say.
I want them to describe the length first.
That is just—it's one of those things that I'd never watched them all in a row until I think it was AMC did a marathon, and I was halfway through A Few More Dollars, and I was just like, oh my god, this is taking forever. It's just, I don't know. Each movie kind of focuses differently, but it's Clint Eastwood
Mhm.
is Clint Eastwood. Every character he's ever played, pretty much. And then essentially the good, the bad, and the ugly are kind of your main characters for the trilogy. You get the guy who's the corrupt sheriff or military guy. I can't really remember. It's been forever since I watched.
Right.
And then the crazy guy who's out for treasure, who him and Clint Eastwood team up at some point to scam a bunch of people on his bounty, and it's just kind of a series of events that happen, all leading up to them in a Mexican standoff.
Oh. Cool.
Tell me this.
Yeah.
I will.
The first one is called Fistful of Dollars.
Yes.
The second one is called For a Few Dollars More. They
Yeah.
clearly had a theme going. Why did they change it to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? That seems
I
stupid.
don't know.
I hate that.
Probably because it went from focusing on them getting money to them as characters.
Depending on how much we want to get into it, I've got it in my series that does well pile. Because
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
we'll leave it alone for now.
All right.
Because there's a lot of good to talk about in that one.
Well,
And
certainly
bad.
not the title.
Damn it.
And
We'll
ugly.
keep the
I
ugly
was
for later.
willing to let it go unsaid. You jumped on it before there could even be a pause.
You really want to let it go? Let it go.
I want spaghetti.
Needs weak. Hot potato.
Can we mash up a
8 Mile's
mashup
my
of...
favorite Western.
Yeah.
Hot potato and mashup. All right, cool.
We're gonna mash up Let It Go with Mom Spaghetti now. Somebody needs to do that.
Let the spaghetti go.
The spaghetti.
And then we'll
I'm
mash it up
pretending that
with
song is called Bomb
Spaghetti
Spaghetti,
Go.
by the way.
Spaghetti Go. We'll mash that up
Spaghetti
with Let My People Go from the
Go.
Prince of Egypt. Deliver us!
Spaghetti Go is so
On the promised land, spaghetti go on the promised land.
What is
Anna.
that?
How did we get here?
You're the next in the Pharaoh.
Lots of things come to mind. There's many, many westerns out there.
Okay.
As far as an example, actually the first one that came to mind,
Yes.
and this is a horrible example because it's just a play off the trope,
Okay.
or maybe that makes it a good example.
Okay.
Back to the Future 3.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, I have that.
I knew.
And not as my one I think of, but the one of the ones that does it well. I want to get into
Yes.
that.
I won't
I
get into
figured.
it, but-
I knew we were going to talk about that one. Like
Yeah.
eventually, it was going to happen. But yeah, no. Back to the Future 3 has a lot of callbacks to it. I was actually talking to a coworker earlier today, and they reused footage from other westerns in that movie, like the Native American chase scene. That was just directly ripped from another movie. I couldn't tell you exactly which one it was, but it was kind of a love letter to it. Like they reused a lot of stuff for it. It's kind of fun. It's a fun little movie. Yeah. Actually,
I don't know the length of time that the movie is.
well, for the whole Back to the Future trilogy, I think it's closer to 9 hours, maybe.
Is it?
Maybe 7?
Probably not. 7 to 8.
8,
It doesn't matter.
9, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8,
8,
8, 8, 8. Todd Ogredose, since we cut in front of you first, what do you think of first?
That's quite all right.
Other than Back to the Future 3.
I go to my favorite western, which is The Magnificent Seven.
Oh, wow.
Which is actually kind of funny because it's based off of a samurai movie.
Yeah. 7 Samurai. Or Samurai
Yeah.
7? 7 Samurai.
Seven
Seven
Samurai.
Thank you.
Samurai.
That's the anime.
But there's just like the atmosphere of the 7 different gunmen saving the small Mexican village. It's what I kind of go to when I think of like that western setting, because it's all the gunslingers at high noon and stuff like that, and it's filled with all kinds of cool characters played by amazing actors. Like Steve McQueen's in it, Yul Brynner, Charles Bronson. Really, really cool movie. And I have to give a shout out to Aquabats, Cowboy Android, which is another kind of play on the Old West trope, but amazing episode of the Aquabat Super Show.
He's Gouda. Taker.
Yeah. So the first thing, honestly, that I thought of when I thought about this trope is, we don't do a lot of musical tropes, but as we were prepping for this episode, the first thing I thought of when I thought of Western was the theme from Jumping Off of Bills, theme from The Good and Bad, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is, of course, the wow, wow, wow.
Isn't it Ecstasy of Gold, isn't it? Isn't that what it's called?
No.
I think it's called Theme from Good. It might be called Sea of Gold.
No, Ecstasy of Gold is another one that's very
I
popular.
thought it was just
Okay.
called
They're
The
both-
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, it's called The
They're
Good, the Bad, and the
both-
Ugly.
Oh, is it just called The Good?
Yes.
Bad?
Yeah,
I thought
they're-
it was just the onomatopoeia for.
Yes, it's called Wee Wee Wee. Wow, wow, wow.
Yes.
It's whistle and asterisks, and then wah wah wah.
I think we found the title for this week's episode.
You're right.
Whistle and asterisks. Wow, wow, wow.
You know what? It's very aptly named, to be honest.
But yeah, I was thinking about that song, and specifically, it represents not just it certainly represents Westerns. It's been parodied and used, even on its own, so many times just to represent the trope of the Old West and cowboys. Even more than that, I started using that as a jumping off point to think about how it's almost purely a piece of Americana, because the Old West doesn't exist anywhere but America, obviously, and it's almost the American equivalent of like the I thought of two other things, which like the Oriental riff, the dun 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 dun, and the Italian riff, which is dun 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 dun. Like that's the American version of those things. We have our own trope that represents America musically.
Yeah, well, even like the Old West and the cowboy are like people in different countries like think of like America.
Mm-hmm.
It is cowboy hats and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, the Old West you can kind of use as a metaphor, or as an extension of America itself in a lot of ways, and I think that that's kind of an interesting idea.
It's our feudal Japan. It's our samurai story. It's I don't know. I always thought it was like our frontiersmen, but I mean, it kind of happens at the exact same time. You know, the Wild West and Davy Crockett.
Well, you have a little bit of a separation from that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go over somebody here, but like what most of like the cowboy stuff took place towards the end of the 18th century or the 1800s, the 19th century. Yeah. Like a lot of that was like when the pioneers went out, there was outlaws and like cowboys, but a lot of the outlaw like what we usually depict as the Old West is when the outlaws started to become the sheriffs. Because people wanted to settle down, they were getting older, they kind of realized their mortality. So that's why you have a lot of like the younger outlaws and having the showdowns with the sheriffs, and it was all this lead up, and then because New York started modernizing, so everyone started moving out west that kind of wanted to do whatever they wanted.
Yeah. Well, and the way that I've always kind of viewed kind of the place in history for westerns, and there is some is it kind of very much harkens back to a very European tradition of like the Knights Errant, where these are like most of your protagonists in westerns are good men. They're just not nice men.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically they're freelances. And I think that's why there's such a strong resonance in kind of a very interesting marriage of both samurai films and westerns, is because they both kind of fit that. These are people who have their own personal codes of honor that stretch back from a chivalrous day, but they live in a world that no longer values that. They're placed in an area that no longer values that.
And I was thinking about that, and I kind of wanted to go into it, but I wasn't sure how much to separate as a trope the Old West / Wild West from cowboys. Because talking about cowboys, I mean, you could do a whole episode on that as well. I mean,
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely a really good point.
Mm-hmm. I think, we'll, because there's a lot of like cowboy fusions, or just like taking a cowboy and putting them into another setting or situation that doesn't work. There's a whole show based on that called Longmire, where it's a cowboy who has to deal with modern times, and apparently it's absolutely ridiculous, and sometimes his cowboy ways get him into trouble and sometimes they get him out, but we'll save that for a later time. Chris, you brought up some really good points. What do you think of first when we bring up the Old West?
Well, for me, like I'm kind of a huge fanatic for the Dollars trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
but I would go with kind of one of the first that I really remember enjoying as a child,
Mm-hmm.
which would actually be the Mexico trilogy, which is basically Desperado, Once
El
Upon a Time,
Mariachi.
the El Mariachi, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and those are all featuring Antonio Banderas and his sweet guitar case full of.
Well, El Mariachi wasn't Banderas though.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that completely derailed.
Straight to a halt.
I was waiting for a, yeah, you're right, or a, oh,
Yeah.
okay, or, oh, you're right, I was thinking of this, but it never happened, so,
Oh
Here we
no,
are.
my headphones are crapping out here tonight.
okay,
But
there we go.
yeah, but no, it's for me that series always kind of was the first very popularized in America for it, at least for our generation,
Mm-hmm.
because it was definitely a throwback to the older ones. But it was interesting to have it from the Mexican perspective rather than the kind of southern, the southwestern perspective,
Yes.
and how it very much ties into God, I know there's a word for it, but don't push me to figure it out here now. But
Okay.
basically, it relies on songs in Mexico and stories in Mexico that basically kind of glorify the mariachi or the brave revolutionary stories, and it was always a very interesting fusion between the two to kind of see an American perspective on a very Central American story. And so that's kind of where I go for first. I mean, besides that, if you wanted to go into other examples, is space westerns.
Yeah, no, I know we're going to talk a little bit about space westerns, but I want to hold off on it for a little, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. My example was I actually thought of Hidalgo first because I watched it not too long ago. Pretty cool movie about a dude who supposedly has the fastest horse in all the West. He's boasted about it in multiple shows. There's a very famous race that happens over in the Arabian Desert, and they have a whole culture built around like their proud, purebred horses and how beautiful it is. And they come to America and say, "Hey, quit saying shit about that horse. He's not that great." And they're like, "He is that great." And they go, "Prove it." And then all of a sudden, he's in the Arabian Desert racing for his life. It's a really cool story. It doesn't necessarily happen completely in the Old West because most of it takes place in, a desert, but it's across the sea rather than in America. But it has some really cool visuals in the beginning about different Native American tribes and sort of like the thinning of Native Americans and like their culture and how history is sort of being rewritten. All of these slaughters and absolute devastating battles are just being rewritten as like, we fought them bravely, when it's just them killing like women and children. So I thought of that. That's a fun Old West thing to go to. Realism.
Yeah.
But okay, I originally had something else. When I think of current Western movies or movies that take place in the West, they're not necessarily in the traditional Old West. They're in almost the fall of the Old West, or like the more modernization of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It seems like people are sort of taking the Western setting and combining it with other stuff via Cowboys versus Aliens or No Country for Old Men, where it's sort of about the fall of that civilization, and it's about like keeping up with the times. There Will Be Blood also, which is kind of like the industrialization of the area and building the town up and sort of getting rid of outlaws and sort of a self-governing, very Christian-based settlement sort of situation. I don't know. Did you guys want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Well, actually, one that kind of ties in with a modern iteration in gaming would be like Red Dead Redemption.
Yep.
Because Red Dead Redemption, I love the fact that you deal with a period in the American West where if you go into the main cities, you've actually got some portions of the city that actually have electric light. Mm-hmm. But then, as soon as you basically begin to head off of the railways, you're right back in kind of the old settler mentality and everything. And it winds up being very interesting because John Marston winds up being very much a product of that older era that doesn't fit into the new one. I mean, there's a reason the events at the end occur the way they do, because he doesn't fit in anywhere else.
And you're not talking about the zombie DLC, of course.
No, not talking about zombie DLC.
Okay.
Because no one fits in the zombie apocalypse. Unless you're a zombie, and then you fit in perfectly.
Well, yeah, of course you do.
Unless you're Bill Murray.
Yeah.
No, he fit in too. Well, that was the problem.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, when I was doing a little research for this afternoon, there's a lot of what the internet calls mix and match subgenres, where it's, like, and this is, I don't want to recite TV tropes, but, Western plus steampunk is cattle punk, or Western plus feudal Japan is samurai cowboy. But there's a whole, there's a whole mix and match list where I think Western is just one of those things that, it's kind of like, it's peanut butter. It's great on its own, but it's also better with other things too. So it's just interesting how open of a kind of a trope it is, I guess.
Because when you think about it, like, what elements make up a Western other than just like the setting? for it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's so you have like a lawless sort of country, like there's outlaws everywhere. There's no like over governing system, like it's a harsh environment. You have like a couple of key characters that usually populate that setting. So you'll have like the outlaw or like the crooked sheriff or like the person who wants to do good or the smuggler who's
Your lone gunman.
Yeah.
Well,
and
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things where it plays into a great it plays into a great niche in storytelling because it deals with, yes, one man can make a difference, but it also, it gives you a setting where things are not as peaceful or as civilized as we are used to.
Mhm.
It's one of those, what happens when people are basically given the freedom they ask for.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of like grit that goes along with it too.
Yeah.
Like it's a very like harsh world, and that lends itself really well to a handful of other genres. Like there's a lot of like sci-fi westerns
Yeah.
in general, and it's stuff like Serenity,
Yeah.
the Firefly series.
Oh, absolutely.
Is very and that's interesting because they'll go to one world and it is just like people in mud huts and it's very like Western, and then they'll go to another planet and it's like super clean sci-fi world. So it's kind of a cool melding of the two worlds with that.
And part of the reason I think it works so well in that is you can almost break down westerns as a generic term to being frontiersmanship.
Yeah.
Anyone who's on the bleeding edge of civilization is going to deal with a harsh environment.
Oh, definitely.
And that harsh environment leads inevitably to harsh people, both in the good and the bad.
And the ugly.
And the ugly.
Oh, Jesus. All three of us.
That was
Great
easy.
job.
That was easy.
And I feel you. And of course, I mean, when people talk about sort of modern reinventions of Westerns, you get Firefly, and then, if you're a weeaboo nerd, you get like Trigun. But
I was gonna mention Trigun.
yeah, I love Trigun. But it kind of makes me wonder where we draw the line, because whenever you look up descriptions of things like Firefly or Trigun, you always see it paired with the word Western. And so I thought, much like you did, Chris, I was kind of thinking about, what makes a Western, that lawless hero who's kind of on the edge, and you have this society where everyone is free. And then I thought, well, why don't we because there are a lot of other things that fall into that. The one that jumped into my head immediately when I was thinking of it was Escape from New York. Nobody ever calls that a Western. It sure does fit all the qualifications of a Western. Like, so where does Western end?
Probably around the Mississippi.
Oh, there you go.
Well, all right, guys, I gotta go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, and I think very much it winds up being almost to kind of classify it in kind of a different term of setting, is it's almost about the scarcity of the environment. It's not like dealing with some westerns or it's not like dealing with some other genres that may fall into that frontiersmanship where the environment is dangerous due to stuff in it that wants you dead. It's that there's nothing, and that's a problem. Like, you have to make something out of it. That's the get rich or die trying type mentality that comes with a lot of, the oil find, the ranch stories, the
train robbery.
Yeah, the train robberies, the revenge stories.
Sure.
Because, every resource is scarce and precious. And I think it's almost, it's not death by abundance, it's death by scarcity. And I think that distinguishes it. And then, of course...
Yeah, of course. No, I'm with you.
Well, you probably got cut off by one of them banditos.
Yeah, but it's the other thing I was going to say is that it's it's also the obvious art direction part of it is Western solidified so hard into an art style.
I don't know. I look at Trigun. Well, so what then? I guess just desert, just like tans and...
Well, no, because there's a lot of different parts to the west. There's like the Badlands in North Dakota and South Dakota, where you have sort of that really rough, like windswept topography, and there's like the Great Plains, where you have miles and miles of there's grass and there's like things to catch, but like civilization is still scarce, and you still like have to hunt on your own, on your own volition. Of course, there's like, the Southwest where there actually is like arid desert and like the more idealized Western.
Yeah.
And then, there's Mexico where you have the fucking saguaro the cactuses,
Saguaro,
the big
yeah.
cactuses.
Yeah.
Saguaro cactuses and the Rango.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think if you were to define an artistic style for westerns that almost need to be included to call it a traditional western, is it almost inevitably has to look like Monument Valley.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
I would say for when you're with your comparison
Also,
of like
the
Escape
Warriors,
from New
if you
York.
guys want another piece that I thought of, but keep going, yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, and I think we can like kind of classify them as like Western-esque.
Yeah.
But I think the main difference, especially if something's kind of like this dystopian future, the difference is that like the pioneer spirit, like they're trying to survive to make a better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Where in a lot of those dystopian futures, they're trying to survive just to see tomorrow.
Ah, yeah, okay, that's an interesting distinction.
Like your Mad Max world kind of thing.
Yeah, is there not? It's not like they're surviving the fallout. They chose to be there.
You're right. Yeah. Okay. You're right. So Western is kind of almost for the characters a choice rather than a eventuality.
Yeah.
It's your manifest destiny.
That's a really interesting idea. Okay, that actually solidifies it a little bit for me.
Okay. I'm glad that we went through this and that we did, touch a little bit on the TV tropes sort of definition of it and go through it, because I think it prepares us a little bit more for... So, no, I think that this really does prepare us very well for, who does it well or just does it differently. I'm going to go Todd up this time, if you do not mind, sir.
I suppose I can. Well, a couple of my examples were mentioned. Trigun was going to be one I was going to mention because it's just kind of a cool blending of like a Western, like traditional Western with like aliens and giant weaponry and stuff like that. And you have a lot of like your Western archetypes are in there. Like you have like Wolfwood, who is kind of like the El Mariachi. He has his gun disguised as something else. You have your lone gunman in Vash, who you root for. And I did want to touch on Back to the Future 3 because
Absolutely.
it's Back to the Future 3 is an interesting and cool way of looking at the Old West, because it's from the perspective of someone who's not from the Old West and thinks they know what the Old West is.
But
so,
go
you go on. Go. What do you have to say?
Let's drop some bombs, man.
Let's Lincoln Douglas this, because honestly, Back to the Future 3 was on my bad list. Because Back to the Future 3 is easily my least favorite of the trilogy, and it's one of the movies that I kind of wish never existed, because I feel like it's the cinematic equivalent of DLC, where you're just like, you're in a sandbox with these characters, and all we're doing is kind of revisiting the old tropes again for the third time. And I realize that that's kind of the fun of the series, is revisiting these tropes again and again. But it's almost by that point the joke has run thin, and it's more than just that Marty goes back and thinks he knows the West. Marty does kind of, because he's watched movies, know the West. Like, it feels a little, I don't know, it's always felt cheap to me, Back to the Future. I'd love to, why are you a fan?
What?
Defend yourself.
Defend yourself. I don't have to explain myself to you.
On my not so favorite list either.
It almost sounds like we need to do this at high noon.
I'll meet you outside of Crappy Corral.
I've got Spurs for everybody.
No, I like it because there is like Doc dresses them up in ridiculous costumes of what they think of the Old West, because they've watched all these old West movies and stuff like that. When he gets there, it's completely different, and they try to kill him because of it. And it's just like they don't have a lot of the modernizations. At some point, Doc makes a giant machine so he can make ice. You think about it, yeah, they don't have a freezer or anything back in the Old West. So I thought it was good as kind of just like a lampshade hang on the Old West, because like you said, Marty does, like, he makes a bulletproof vest like he sees in an old Western movie. So, but it's just that's kind of the fun of it, I think, is that they acknowledge that. And they kind of make jokes and play off of that at some point Marty gets challenged to a duel and he's like, "Oh, what? High noon?" And he's, "No, 6 o'clock in the morning when I eat breakfast." So I thought it was a good example just because of it points out a lot of those tropes. It's good on like a lampshade hanging level.
Yeah.
Which is really, it may not be completely realistic or anything like that, but I think just as kind of like a poking fun of the genre, it's a really good example of
It's
that.
true. It feels more like a big parody than it does a something cohesive. But you're right. It's definitely fun. I mean, I don't think there's a Back to the Future movie that isn't fun, but
I don't think it's done with like malice or anything
No,
like
not
that
at all.
too. It's like, it's like when we talked about Megamind. They're poking fun at it, but with as much love as they possibly can. And it's not a fish out of water story, obviously, because he thinks he knows it, but it does. It has those, like you said, comparisons where he has the ridiculous like tassels and stuff that he's wearing, and he goes back. And they're like, "What is that getup? Did you just come from the circus?"
Nikkei.
Stuff like that. But no, and I'm glad we talked about it. But we'll talk about it a little bit more.
I'm
later
curious to hear the counter argument too.
on. Anna, who do you think does it well?
I have a strange specific example that probably no one has heard of. Old show that I didn't know existed for a long time called Calamity Jane.
Yeah,
Or The Legend of Calamity Jane.
I remember watching it with you.
Yeah, it was a really short animated series about this like mixed race
Lady Cowboy.
Yeah, Lady Cowboy. And it was really cool. I liked the themes of it a lot because there's many tropes that are good and bad about the Wild West. And this one was cool because it was more about the actual like struggle of Native Americans at the time, and expansion, manifest destiny in the U.S., and trying to actually merge the two and have it was kind of like a save the day situation of trying to unite the two and kind of resolve those disputes.
It's one
which
of
I thought
the
was cool.
earliest examples of a feminist Old West movie that I think I can, Old West feminist TV show that I can really kind of see, because she's the main protagonist, and it still has all the old tropes in it. It has like the U.S. Army general that's kind of corrupt and like moving gold around and like trying to exploit the Native Americans. It's got the train robbery. It's got the banditos. It's got everything, and it goes all around from the Badlands to the deserts to Mexico. It's all over the place, but she's actually kind of just like a hired gun that helps people as well. I don't know. It's a really cool example, and it's one of like the first it's sort of like the female samurai or like the female knight or something like that. It's the out of place woman warrior like in a man's world, and I thought that was pretty cool because it didn't last long and it wasn't very popular. But it still holds up. I recommend that you guys go and check it out, The Legend of Calamity Jane. No, that was a pretty good example.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I could talk about more stuff later.
Bill, Mr. U Video. Hey.
So mine is actually like a really weird one because like I just love this movie, but The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. If you have not heard of it, it is a South Korean Western.
Wait, quick. How long is it?
You're cutting out a little.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
is 1 hour and 29 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, describe it.
I can't form an opinion
I
until
think- I
I
don't
have
know.
length of time.
Anyway, Seeker.
So it's a kimchi western?
Yes. I guess except it actually has South Korean actors.
There's a couple Asian. Isn't there? I've never seen it, but Sukiyaki Western Django or Django. Isn't that? Has anybody seen that?
Yeah. You
Is
could just
it
be making up
Unchained?
stuff for all I know.
No, it's it's a Japanese spaghetti western. I don't know.
A ramen western.
Oh my god. Yes, a udon western, and I'd never heard The Good, the Bad, and Weird. I'm looking it up right now, but just amazed that that is embraced by countries. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of loosely based on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, except the ending has, I think, a really good twist to it, and it's one of the reasons I like it. But it is just kind of like a crazy action movie with good gunfights in it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interesting, like, because it takes place in 1930s Manchuria. I think I'm pronouncing that right, or Manchukuo. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's essentially, you have an area that has, like, the Japanese, the Koreans, and the Chinese all kind of fighting over this area, but it's like right when all of these countries were kind of modernizing, so they're like, it's kind of Western and kind of modern. It would be like comparable to something like Red Dead Redemption, where you have like at the end of what the West would have been. But it's really like a cool take on the trope. Kind of don't want to spoil it, but no, if Staker's gonna look it up, maybe he'll watch it later. I don't want to spoil it.
Saker, I wanted to comment to you. The Old West theme is actually really, really embraced across the world.
That's oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We had a teacher from Thailand who said when he was a little kid, they would always want to play cowboys and Indians. That in the same way people hear as kids would fantasize about like ninjas and that kind of thing. Feudal Japan, samurais, and think it's super cool. That's what they would think.
That's such an interesting.
Wearing a cowboy hat and riding a horse and shooting a gun.
Yeah.
Chris Moonjump.
All right, I want to talk about the Dollars trilogy.
Talk about it.
Okay, so one of the
Take a shot.
We've already established links, so you can just jump right into it, dude.
All right, so the one thing that's actually really that's impressive for the time, and especially in terms of cinematography, is if you actually look at it, A Fistful of Dollars, the beginning of that movie goes for almost 10 minutes with no dialogue at all, and yet it's still
cuts out.
Still cuts out.
No, he said it's still like it's very silent.
It's
and,
still. It's a talkie.
Yeah, but basically it still kind of conveys part of the story even in that silence, and it's a brilliant piece of movie direction. One of the things that actually goes with it that's very interesting is a lot of westerns wind up being based off of effectively small morality tales and things like that, because you're dealing with it, and that's actually one of the big discussions about the Dollars trilogy is, in each of the movies, the man with no name has 3 different names that he's given by other people. Never actually says what his is. And part of the theming and things that go into it is that he's not necessarily human, that he may actually be a spirit of vengeance for the wicked.
He's a ghost rider.
Yes. And it's one of those that's part of what The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is about, is dealing with they kind of portray him as a bounty hunter with it, but everyone who's going for the cash is doing it basically for a different reason. And basically The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is almost commentary on the aspects of the man with no name. He's a little bit of all 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of it, because it's actually the one that really gives you the most dialogue of his throughout the 3 movies. And he's like, if you ever get a chance to rewatch it, because yes, it is long, but there's also a reason why it is widely considered the best Western ever made, and actually one of the best movies ever made. And it's because it's just a brilliant piece of work. And still winds up giving you a deep story, even in what at that point was even widely considered kind of a very overplayed genre. And actually, the funny thing is Clint Eastwood kind of revolutionized the genre with his acting in that trilogy, because before westerns were very much not gritty. I mean, they dealt with having bad people in them, but most of the time you had, they portrayed the good guys against the bad guys. It was really one of the first anti-heroes you get in the genre. And it was actually the point where that's the reason why John Wayne and Clint Eastwood never did a movie together, was because John Wayne massively disapproved of Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name.
Huh.
Because he thought he was a terrible character and influence on people.
Wow.
because he's kind of a very morally gray. He falls into that kind of category of some people just need to get dead. Doesn't really matter the reason.
A story about morality.
Mm-hmm.
Story about a man. That was my cowboy voice. How'd you like it? I'm going to be doing tryouts and a panel at OhioCon about how much better I am
Already accepted.
than anyone else. Saker, aka Dimmsdale. Who do you think does it? Well?
I thought this would be tough for me because Western is one of my least favorite genres. I really kind of despise it. But it was much easier for me than I thought it would be. I came up with a huge list of stuff, of which I'm only going to read one. But I don't know. I think no matter if you like it or not, this genre is so big, and because it mixes so well with all the other tropes, you can get so much out of any part of it, really. And of course, Firefly definitely topped my list. But we've already talked about that a little bit. So I want to talk about one of my my number one favorite Western movie, which hasn't been brought up yet. It's called El Topo. El Topo, which it's a Mexican film, and the translation is The Mole, English.
I thought it was the top.
It's at the top of his list.
Oh,
The El Topo of his list.
It's
I had to say it.
That was easy.
it's by a director called Alejandro Jodorowsky. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Really into surrealism, and so this movie is incredibly surreal. I never would have found it on my own. The only reason I ended up seeking it out is that when I got really obsessed with No More Heroes 1 when it came out, I was reading these things about here's things that influenced Suda-51 during the development, and El Topo was at the top of the list. It's about a gunman who is manipulated into killing the four other best gunmen in the land by this woman, which obviously you can see echoes of in No More Heroes, obviously in the modern day. But it's split into two parts. So the first half is about him killing the four best gunmen, and then, spoiler, being betrayed. And then the second half is him doing this sort of bizarre metaphysical journey where he's helping this community of dwarves escape a mine shaft that they've been stuck in. And it's super weird, and he has to put on a show for these cultists to get the money, to get the dynamite, to get them out of the... It's so friggin' weird and amazing, and it takes in all these themes of Asian philosophy and Eastern philosophy and Zen, and it's so and lots of religious symbolism too. He himself is a Jesus figure. He gets shot right in the stigmata, and it's just an incredible and an incredibly weird film, but beautiful nonetheless. And I would definitely recommend. Oh, sorry, 125 minutes long.
Now we're ready to listen to
repeat
you.
everything I just said.
No. Yes.
I'll edit it to the front. I'm not gonna do that.
The beginning of the episode, that's how long it is.
Please be in the background of the episode, just like the stretchy noises were for the last one. Just like the number of minutes this episode is. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll just repeat it over and over again. Well, yeah, I'll just
once.
hold it up there.
Perfect.
After I edit it, of course.
Oh, I also had not the movie, but the song
Yeah.
"The Wild Wild West" by Will Smith.
That's
damn
which
it.
list do you think that's on for me, Saker?
Well,
Yeah, which
There's
list
no
do you think
list
that's on
above
for
good,
me as
so
well?
I really hope it's on your good list.
See, well,
Oh,
it's
perfect.
not on my
So
bad
it's on the-
list, so...
It's on your spaghetti list.
Yeah!
It's an ugly list.
Is it on your giant mechanical spider
Hey,
list?
hey.
It's on my
I
Kevin
clearly
Smith
said
story
it,
list.
not the movie, just the song.
How is the song a good
Because
one?
haven't you?
Wiki Wild.
It's a good example of anything.
Wild West.
I don't care what. I could have brought it up during any episode so far,
Anything.
but I chose this one randomly.
Randomly, when as it just happenstance occured, and we were
Very
talking
strange.
about the wild.
Yep, I flip a coin
Wild
before every
West.
episode I'm on to see if I'm going to call Wild Wild West on that episode. Yeah.
This time, heads. Actually, this time the edge,
Yes.
which is the weirdest part,
Oh,
because that's where I live, on the edge.
nicely done. That song?
No one cares about mine, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. It's Dead Man by Jim Jarmusch. That was my Who Does It Well. It's
No,
what?
I was.
What's so funny?
Jim Jarmusch does not sound like a real
Hey.
name.
It's I
Cleveland
did make it
native,
up. You can
Cleveland
Google that
native
shit.
Jim Jarmusch.
Yep.
Jarmusch.
Jarmusch. He's an actual guy. Look him up. Do it right now.
Jim is like
Didn't
the
he
most
do?
casual
He
name,
did.
and then
He did
Jarmusch.
Ghost Dog, right? Which is one of my favorite samurai films of all time. I'm not joking. I fucking love Ghost Dog.
Sorry, I was thinking of Cop Dog, which is about.
That's what I thought
You are a
dog
terrible
who's a
person.
ghost.
I got real excited that you knew what Pop was.
You're a terrible person. Get out. But no, I think Dead Man is a really good example. It starts off in an area. It explores like mysticism from a Native American perspective. It's about a guy's kind of journey through acceptance of his own death. It's about like you've got the lawmen who are coming after him. He goes from like a sort of meek little dude to like a survivalist. It's sort of a take on the Lone Ranger almost, but it looks at it in like a traditional black and white indie sort of I don't know, sort of take on it. I really dig it. And it's a lesser known kind of film director. Anna didn't know who it was, so I don't expect you to. But yeah, check it out.
Like, I'm not sure.
Have you heard of Dippin' Dots? Then no one knows.
It's actually funny. The first time I ever had Dippin' Dots was actually at a
it
Navajo
ties in.
heritage site out on the base. Yeah.
The first time I had them was in Frontierland.
I don't know, but we've got a contender for the new episode title.
Well done.
Yep, there it is.
Dippin' Dots.
Dip it down, west. Wow. Go on.
That's impressive.
Yeah, no, my
was
parents
easy.
when I went out for my first national tournament in karate, actually we took like 3 weeks and basically traveled out through the American Southwest and then up to Colorado and then swung back through the north.
Mhm.
It was really cool.
Here's the
There
really
was
important question,
Dippin'
Chris.
Dots from
Did you ford the river?
What was that?
Did you ford the river?
Yes, we did, and no one
Always.
died.
I'd like to
Oh,
congratulate
how
you
did
for
we
our
not
first
mention
Oregon
that
Trail
yet?
reference. Thank you, Bill. That, you know what? That just deserves a little bell.
Oregon and did it.
Oregon and did it. I died of dysentery, and that's why I'm a pumpkin golem. There it is. That's canon. That's why.
An origin
Oregon
story. I
origin.
didn't expect that in this episode.
Yeah, that's my Oregon story. Ah, no. I didn't do that. You hijacked the bell.
You'll never know who did it.
It was well deserved.
It was. You know what?
Bell deserved.
It was Bell
It was
deserved.
well deserved.
Drag me to Bell.
Saved by
Say no. I wasn't. It just sort of happened.
Zatch.
Sada! Where am I? Are these Dippin' Dots? How did they get here? Oh god. Okay. I'm coming down. who does it badly.
No.
Well,
okay, the movie. The movie.
Everyone
Okay, good. You're fine.
Yeah,
You're
the
good.
movie. The
movie.
movie. The
And
movie.
the
Todd?
song, specifically the song.
Have we started with you first yet, Chris Moonjump? I don't think we have, so we'll start with you.
Oh,
But yeah,
my
that's
Wild
some
West.
shit. Anyway, go on.
Oh my god.
Voicing everyone's opinion together.
Yeah, I wasn't really attempting to go first. I just figured I'd get it off
You're
everyone's
representing
chest.
the people.
Get it off our wild chest.
Just-
Jim Chest, Desperado.
Rough Rider, no, you don't want nada. 6 gun on us, run on us, Buffalo Soldier.
Look, it's like I told you, any damsels that through distress. But out of that dress, when she meet Jim West, roughneck, so go check the law, abide. Watch your step in a flex and get a hole in your side.
God. Just
Damn.
That's gonna be in the background behind the time of the episode.
Oh my god.
We all have a few hidden deaths. And that is
Wild
obviously
deaths.
Bill, Mr. U videos.
My jaw was open the whole time.
But but no, it's one of those, because that's a movie that doesn't even do either of the two genres it attempts to put together well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, first off, it's not even a very compelling, like, it's not a compelling Western in that it doesn't actually pick any one of the Western genres to really stick into.
Mhm.
It's not a train heist, it's not a ranch hand, it's not an outlaw, it's not a sheriff. You know, it's just, hey, we're set in the West, but we've kind of got mechanical, steampunky elements that aren't really either of those either,
Yep.
nor does it actually fit in the story.
Well, it's interesting because the original, the TV show, The Wild Wild West, was essentially like spies in the West.
Mhm.
So it was still like a blending of two genres, but it was done very like cleverly. And in the movie, it was kind of like they're like, oh yeah, let's have them be spies still, but like, yo, screw that subtle kind of spy. We're making them James Bond with giant mechanical spiders and mechanical men, and it was just a terrible execution.
It didn't really know what it wanted to be.
Yeah, well, and then when you get things like, oh, this guy's head cut off, but you can totally see through his eyes on a projector. It's like that's not how. I'm sorry, you've gone past my point of disbelief. Actually, as an interesting aside on that, Westerns also do have a history in actually old noir and spy films, or in old noir and spy stories, because actually Akira Kurosawa's major influence for Yojimbo, which then winds up being the influence for The Man with No Name, is actually Dashiell Hammett's Red Harvest. Dashiell Hammett being the author of The Maltese Falcon and the father of the noir genre.
The Maltese Falcon, wasn't there something special about that movie?
What was it called?
What was the MacGuffin called in that movie? We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, we'll Google it.
Yeah, Google it. Legalize it. Mr. U video.
Oh no, I don't have anything.
I think he's already brought enough to the table.
For anything that's, you can't think of anything terrible?
Like, I don't... Like, I'm sure there are, like, really bad spaghetti westerns that I've watched, but I cannot, for the life of me, think of one offhand. Like, most of the ones that I remember are, like, the Clint Eastwoods and a few of the John Waynes.
Mm-hmm.
I could say, like...
Oh.
No, I won't even say it. I
Okay.
refuse. That one level in Mario Party 2? No. Well, that was still fun.
Oh man, I love that one though, because you could have hootenannies.
Who doesn't love a good
Who
hootenanny?
doesn't love a good sock hop and a hootenanny?
We once turned a 15-round game of Mario Party into a 4.5-hour saga.
Sounds about right.
That
That's
is
good.
a hootenanny.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
Hootenanny.
let's just say Back to the Future
Oh,
Part
yeah, good
3
call.
for the NES.
Oh.
I'm sorry, it wasn't on the NES. It was on
Didn't
the
they
Sega
do?
Mega
Oh, it was
Drive.
2 and 3 on
Oh.
the NES, right? Didn't they do a double pack?
Yes, the 2 and 3 was the NES
Well-
one. Yeah.
Great conversation.
That's my
Well-
cop out.
Well, Annie?
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you think does it poorly?
Specific examples are hard to come by as far as an entire film.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say anything about the new Seth MacFarlane movie that's going to come out.
Oh.
Yeah, 1,000 Ways to Die in the West, or whatever it's called.
Mm.
But the trouble I have with stuff like that, I kind of agree with Saker, where Westerns tend to be my least favorite genre for things, but I think it's because it's become such a trope that a lot of people don't do it well. It's just like a one-off thing, rather than having the entire topic be it. Because I think the strength in Westerns is in the themes that aren't really done anymore. Because it's really cool. I mean, it's stuff that everyone gets. It's guns, horses, good versus evil. You've got a lot of corruption with gambling and saloons and things like that, which I think are themes that people really enjoy today. I was actually going to mention how it sort of ties in for me with some zombie apocalypse settings.
Yeah.
Where you have the loner trying to survive in this
specialist.
dangerous world. It was all about everything being really risky and trying to overcome tough situations because everything was new at the time.
Sorry, I don't mean to derail you. Are there any zombie westerns? There's got to be.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess.
Red Dead Redemption
And
DLC.
it just mixes so well, and you're right. The character archetypes are right there. So I was just wondering if anybody knew any offhand. Oh, sorry. Continue. I'll look for some.
Yeah. No. I mean, I wish people would do that when they bring westerns back, because I don't know. It just always feels slow paced and not focusing on the things that are actually exciting, to me at least. It's more about the imagery than anything. It's about the spurs and walking through the door and the same shit we've seen over and over, rather than taking it someplace further.
Well, to touch on your point, and I'm gonna give it right back over to Chris Moonjump after. It's like you talked about. A Western has a certain style and theme, or feel. But for the zombie movies, they have that too.
I'm not saying it's the only thing that does it.
But I'm going to do a little comparison, a little correlation, because a zombie movie is about not the zombies being terrible and coming after you. It's a social experiment. It's seeing how people react in the worst circumstances and how they kind of overcome that. And I think in a Western situation, that's more or less the same. Like the bandits are shaking down the town. You've got this guy coming in, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna help him? Is he gonna take a shot? What's going on? So, I mean, there's more ways to kind of explore it with different social situations or making a commentary on things. And people are more interested in, I'm TV troping it a little bit, but, just kind of jazzing it up a little bit and mixing it into different stuff rather than kind of touching on that interpersonal theming that you can see in and I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't watched a lot of the older westerns. I'm just kind of getting into it right now. A lot of my examples are newer stuff, but it's interesting and I kind of want to see more out of it, which is maybe why I do the show. I don't know. Is this a podcast? What is this? What are we doing? Oh, hey, Chris Moonjump.
Oh, yeah. One that I would touch on that was a more modern example that utterly failed as a Western movie was the most recent Lone Ranger.
Yep. I'm a little depped out, man. Just personal note, I'm a little depped out.
Yeah.
Well, I hate it because I was a fan of the old Lone Ranger stuff, and I was really excited to see that movie. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And
I'm so sorry, Todd.
I'm sorry. Oh. I'm also sorry if you saw Alice in Wonderland, because that's what did it for me.
Yeah, well, the same. I'm a fan of Alice in Wonderland stuff and the nonsensical and the through the looking glass Jabberwock and all that stuff. And that was another punch to Todd's happiness.
Yeah, and that winds up in many ways. Part of what really made that movie fail is that it wasn't about the Western part. It was, let's watch Johnny Depp be zany for a couple of hours. Did you like it when Johnny Depp was kind of like Captain Jack Sparrow in other movies? Well,
Pirates of the Lone Ranger?
Yeah.
Lone Rangers of the Caribbean.
Well, here he is being the most kind of like Captain Jack Sparrow he's been in a while.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that wound up making, what was it, because didn't he do voices for
Django
Django as
did he?
well?
Oh, Rango.
Oh, Rango.
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 Yeah.
Rango
Rango,
Unchained
yeah.
was a much
Slightly
different
different.
film.
Yes.
I feel like this is the second time we've made a Rango Unchained joke. But yeah, he did do the voice of the main character.
By the way, Undead or Alive,
Yeah.
2007, a zombie comedy horror, 91 minutes, starring Chris Kattan because he had nothing else to do in 2007.
Oh, God.
What?
I sense a movie we need to all watch.
I sense a
the
riff
rest
tracks
of the cast,
coming on.
surprisingly, is amazing. Brian Posehn, Matt Besser, the
Brian
cast is
Posehn?
really good, but it stars
Awesome.
Chris Kattan, which is not a good sign.
Chris Kattan?
don't know,
Fucking
man.
Chris Kattan? I thought you...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Undead
no,
or Alive is
I have
also-
to. I have to now. It's Corky
This
Romano.
is like when I first told you about the
Oh,
Popeye.
good riddance.
God damn it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to, touch on that. It does exist.
Good riddance.
I feel better knowing that exists.
Yeah.
Shit.
I lost place.
Yeah, right.
Where are we?
Was it just now? What? Was it? It was Ben. It was Bill.
It was Bill and then Todd?
Well, we covered my example pretty solidly.
Okay.
with the Wild West. The Wild
Desperado.
West.
Jim West, Desperado.
No!
All right.
Okay, Saker.
My
take us home.
example is gun. I
I'm
told
drunk.
you
I can't
every
drive. You have
episode.
to
Did
take
I
us
not
home.
make myself clear? You have to take my podcasting keys. Okay. My example is Gunsmoke,
Okay.
but not the Gunsmoke you're thinking of. My example is the game Gunsmoke for the NES. GUN.
Oh, yes.
No,
Isn't
it's
that
not.
with
You're
the,
thinking maybe
Nintendo
Hogan's
Zapper?
Alley? I don't know. But it's spelled GUN period SMOKE to avoid copyright infringement justly. It is actually a really fun game, but okay, let me just lay it out for you. There is a town that is being overrun by a band of criminals called the Wingates. Good enough. The town is called Hicksville. All right, kind of weird. And so a lone gunman named Billy Bob
Of
must
course.
come in and create order. He's the bounty hunter who's trying to kill these things. Billy Bob.
He's Billy Bob
Like
the Kid.
it's a fine game. It was made by Capcom in the height of their shmup phase, so it plays a lot like 1942, 1943, which are amazing games. But like, I feel like Western is not appropriate for a shmup because a Western is one dude and another dude, and they're standing there and they're shooting at each other. It's not like Bullet Hell where there's like a million outlaws all shooting at this guy. And, like it just doesn't.
Actually, I think a better example is it plays like Rambo on
Yeah,
the
oh,
Master
yeah, yeah.
System, Todd, if you remember
It
when we played
does.
that.
It does. Yeah, it's a shmup. You're right. It's not really like
You just
1942.
walk forward and hope that you don't get
Yeah,
stuck.
because if you get stuck, you die, which also makes a lot of sense. If you get stuck between the moving, apparently brick wall that's behind Billy Bob and the flower pot in front of you, you're dead.
So it's a realistic
Yeah,
game.
absolutely. But like, yeah, it's just like it's silly. It's got like ridiculous Native American stereotypes, which I know we're gonna get into in a later episode, maybe.
Yes.
It's got just like a horse is a power up, and all it does is it gives you one extra hit point, which means they kill the horse instead of you. It's just a terrible, like I don't know.
That poor horse.
Like the setting, it's a fine game. The setting just fails. It does not have to be a Western and gains nothing from being Western. I don't know if they were trying to cash in, if Westerns were big in 1985, but I don't know. Anyway, Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
Yup.
Gunsmoke. I think... I didn't see the Jonah Hex movie, but, you know, there it is.
Spoiler, it's not good.
Spoiler. Oh, I could talk about Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, I guess. But I don't think anyone
I
else
think
saw
that
that
was
movie.
historically accurate.
You know what?
No one's allowed to talk about it unless I am horribly drunk because I don't want to remember it ever again.
Well, here comes the second part of the podcast where we all riff tracks it. Actually, Assassin's Creed 3 was also on my bad list, but that wasn't. I mean, it doesn't all take part in the West. Technically, it's more like the pioneer forests, and it's more during like colonization and settlization before we actually move.
Yeah, so wasn't that like Revolutionary
Yeah, so
War
I
times?
can't necessarily use that one. So I'm just going to talk about Gun, the game. And this came out for Xbox. It was a little bit before Red Dead Redemption. It was like their first kind of try on doing like a Grand Theft Auto, but in the Old West sort of setting. It's not necessarily that like the story was bad, but after a while you kind of run out of things to do. It's very linear. You end up like not really like, yeah, you can kind of hunt people down or you can like go out and hunt stuff, but it doesn't really have that social commentary except for like the corruption story. It has to do with gold, and then there's that ridiculous fight at the end with the dynamite at the very end of it, where a mechanic is just introduced in the last fight, but that's, a thing on its own and not necessarily pertaining to the trope itself. I guess all I'm trying to say is that for Gun the game, you pretty much ran dry early on. You weren't really able to... You went to a couple of towns, but you didn't really get like the whole feel of the Old West. It was sort of pigeonholed and watered down. I mean, granted, it's a first try and we all have to start somewhere, but after a while, you ran out of things to do. You just became a horse killer. That was the only way you could get your fun eventually in the game, was just to kind of shoot down a horse, because things ran out in the actual Old West.
Well, at least it didn't have a name.
I guess. It felt so good to get out of the rain.
That was easy.
That was easy.
That was easy.
I just like a game named Gun.
Yeah.
No, it's a great name for him.
That sounds like an oddly indie title name.
Mm-hmm.
No, it does.
What if you just played as a gun?
Ooh.
How does the gun feel?
Huh? No, like you don't do anything. You just watch a movie, but from the gun's perspective.
No.
Yeah,
You
but
don't
like the gun
have to be a gun.
It's a dating sim. What?
It's a Russian roulette dating sim.
Yes.
Hey, we tied back
Russian
to
roulette dating sim is a pretty sweet band name. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. We've come full circle, just like in Russian roulette. So, any further thoughts about, is there anything else that you'd want to see in a Western? Anything else that you'd like to say about it? Any final last words? Who hasn't gone first yet? I think everyone's gone first. I want to
Everyone's
say.
first.
Everyone's first. If you're not first, you're last.
You haven't gone first,
I haven't.
Ken.
First is the
But I never go first because I want to hear what everyone else says. Because as the host, my opinion, but everyone else,
I'll be honest. I haven't gone first yet. I'll be
Okay.
forthright with it.
Thank you for being honest with me.
I'm sorry. All right, it took
And
me
now
a
we
minute.
can begin the intervention, since you're
That's right. I forgot this was an intervention.
Okay.
So, as I was doing my research on this, I thought a really interesting theme that was done by very few pieces of media was the idea of an end of an era, which would be like they're cowboys, but they're also still, they're now cars, and they're now, so these people are holding on to a tradition and a way of life that is dead or dying. I think that's a really interesting idea, and I don't remember what piece of media I was reading, but it was like the end of the movie is like it's this whole movie, and then at the end the cowboy gets hit by a car. And it's like, this is the best like shitty metaphor of all time. Like, and then it was the modern age. Like, I don't know, but I want to see that. I didn't really think about that theme before, and it's hard for me to even envision the fact that those two things existed at the same time. But I would like to explore that a little more.
Well, I mean, with like there are movies that kind of touch on it, but don't necessarily go all the way there. Like the Kill Bill series. I mean, there's Western and samurai in there, chocolate and peanut butter. And I mean, when do those movies chronologically take place? I'm just asking the open room, actually. Yeah,
For Kill Bill? Oren Ishii is the first person she kills.
Or like you just talk about like the two, like how is it set up?
Yeah, like
Like,
chronologically in time, I guess, for like when it's set up.
I think the beginning of Kill Bill Volume 1 is she has already killed two of them when she gets to, I think her name's Anita King. And then it goes back to Orishi because she was like the big, like one of the first she had to take out. And then it's a little while later when like the second one shows you when she first came out of the coma, and then it jumps to when she hunts down Bill's brother and then Bill.
And that's what I was thinking of, Bill's brother, and then the one-eyed woman whose name I can't remember right now. I guess it happened at the same time.
Oh yeah.
But it's that scene where they're like in the trailer in the middle of the desert, and it's kind of sparse, and she has to kind of make her way out of there, and like that brutal struggle just in the trailer.
Oh, like that I really like the beginning of that one, just because, like, especially when Bill's brother just shoots him with the rock salt. He's like, I know better than to get in a sword fight with you.
She has to punch her way out of the grave.
He was such a cool character. I loved Bill's brother.
I believe that was Mr. Blonde too, was the actor.
And you kind of get more or less the same kind of struggle at the beginning of No Country for Old Men, where he just finds all of the drug money in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a Mexican standoff, and he's got like a dude chasing him like for the whole fucking movie. And it's talking about how like they're, it's an old cowboy, and he's trying to, outrun this newer version of a hired gun, of an assassin, of a crazed person who doesn't, follow the rules, and he can kind of find his way around the law. And then there's like the old sheriff that's trying to find him too. And those movies really stand out to me, actually. Or No Country for Old Men does. I wish I had mentioned that for my Who Does It Well, I think, but it doesn't. Well, I think I'm just rambling at this point, but. No, I'd agree. I'd like to see a little bit more of the kind of old-fashioned cowboy that gets into newer situations, and that's why I'm gonna start watching Longmire on HBO.
What is it?
It's called Longmire on HBO. It's been recommended to me by a couple of people. It's about like a cowboy in modern times, and he starts a detective agency because he doesn't know what else to do with his life.
Oh, I see. Oh no, I searched for it, and the first thing that came up is Longmire. This is from today. Longmire has been canceled. Sorry, Ken.
Sorry. Well,
yeah,
that was easier to
only
catch up.
3 seasons. You're fine.
All right. Well, good.
Sorry, I feel like I just immediately halted all momentum that we had.
You just shot me with rock salt and buried me.
Bang, bang. Got my pumpkin down.
I'll go ahead and go then. Actually, like, we mentioned it, and it's one of my absolute, like, all-time favorite movies, actually, is El Mariachi. I love Robert Rodriguez's stuff. And I think that, especially because I don't really like Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico as much, because El Mariachi was so much not like the typical Western story. Like, the mariachi in the story, he totally, like, fumbled into that situation, not meaning to. And I think that makes for a more interesting story compared to, like, we've already seen the grizzled outlaw or like anti-hero going in and saving a town or just some people, and we've seen like the super good guy like John Wayne movies, but it's very interesting to see a character who never has ever shot a gun, someone who's like, especially for the mariachi, his hands were his tool of the trade. Like, if he couldn't play guitar, he had nothing. It was an interesting, I think, take on it. And it's one of those I would like to see them get away from the two, like either super good guy as our lead or grizzled anti-hero.
A more ambiguous alignment chart, if you will.
Yeah, mess around a little bit more with your character.
Yeah, it's paragons and anti-heroes are both easy to write. It's that person in the middle who's conflicted in multiple aspects that makes them interesting as a main character. Cowboy?
Like a monk,
yes.
Like
You could totally do
well,
that.
I mean, there's like the Big Lebowski cowboy,
but don't do Bulletproof Monk.
Oh, how do we get this far and not talk about Sam Elliott in any way?
He likes root beer.
He's the quintessential cowboy.
He is the Zen cowboy, actually, isn't he? He offers sage wisdom.
He really is.
Huh. Well, he is in No Country for Old Men, too.
How about that?
Fair enough.
Moving on.
I want to see a little more. Like, we've talked about a lot of like the Western elements used in like not Western settings. Like, I want to see like a few more things like a Cowboy Bebop, where that is, I mean, half of its name is
Yeah.
Cowboy.
Outlaw
but,
Star's great. No, dang it!
Exactly.
By the way, also a space western.
Exactly. But it doesn't come off exactly as a Western, but there's a lot of elements of it in it. Like the whole main group are just like different elements of like a Western setting. So it's done really, really well. And I'd like to see more of that. Like as much as I love like the blatant hanging lampshades tropes of a Western, it's one of my favorite parts. Like the Three Amigos is a beautiful, beautiful love
That was
letter to
on
that.
my list also.
Oh, I love the Three Amigos. It's a fantastic movie in every way. But I would like to see a lot more of like the subtleties, and that's what makes like an intriguing kind of story and setting, is when it is a genre and you can't really tell right off the bat that it is that specific genre. So I'd like to see a little bit more of like an exploration of that kind of thing.
And
I think I had a pretty decent rant about what problems I have with it and what I want to see. Basically, I just want to see it more unique and less of a copy and paste sort of situation.
yeah.
And it's become the reason I dread Westerns now, because it's more of a copy and pasting the same situation into a Western setting without focusing on themes that are actually interesting for it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pointless situation where it's in the West, rather than actually making that, like, enhancing the story.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fartsy fartsy.
Chris Moonjump?
I totally agree with Todd's sentiment on it. Is that, rather than necessarily trying to take some of the art direction and theming of the West, is really focus on the soul of it. Is being able to blend basically what makes it feel like a Western without what makes it look like a Western. And yeah, because I think it is one of those things where they tell a great set of stories, and they tell a great set of stories for their, in spite of their settings, and you can put them anywhere as long as you understand what that base is.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's just a good like kind of wrap up statement for just a general sort of feeling. And you've talked about it, and Todd's talked about it, and Anna's talked about it too, where I guess that's more of what I'd like to see. It's actually correlating a lot to what Anna stated in the beginning, where it's like, do a social experiment with your characters, actually see how they interact with each other given the setting and circumstances. Just on a personal note, I'd love to see more zombie / paranormal sort of activities. I know that's sort of blending the genres a little bit, but I'm kind of a sucker for that, because there's a lot of really cool, and we'll talk about it later, I promise, Native American mysticism and stuff that doesn't always get touched on. For the Old West setting, there's a whole mythology and religion set out there that doesn't really get used, and it's really cool. And it doesn't always play a big part, unless, cowboys versus aliens kind of comes into play, which we didn't talk about at all, but that's okay.
You mentioned it now.
I did. I mentioned it now. I believe that is an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah.
I got this for you though, Ken, because you guys mentioned it, and it's not exactly like zombies, but it kind of is the West in a different light, with like seeing how characters react to a situation. and I'm sure me and Todd are kicking ourselves over it. Tremors 4.
Oh, I at some point thought of saying Tremors just in general, but I thought it fell more into dark comedy than it did specific Western, so I held
but
off.
Remember, 4 specifically takes place in the Wild West.
Old West. It does.
And it's about 101 minutes long.
Check.
I think there's a movie called like The Burrowers, and it's a movie that's set in the Great Plains, and it's a cowboy like taking a stagecoach on the Oregon Trail, and these effing monsters come up from under the ground, and they used to eat the buffalo, but the buffalo are dying out, so now they're eating the people that are like traversing along the pathways. It's a terrible Z-grade movie, but hey, watch it if you like terrible things, I guess. Alrighty,
I'm on it.
Good to know. I think we've really gone in depth into the Old West. Actually, a lot more in depth than I thought. I've got some dust on me now. Thanks, Ken. But no, this has been us talking about the Old West on Utropeia. Next week, I believe, is Archetypes. Am I right in that?
You are
okay,
correct.
I guess
You're the
so.
host,
I
you're
guess I
always
can't
right.
change it. It's canon now. So for the archetype that I would like to talk about next week, it is the ruler archetype. A good motto for that is power isn't everything, it's the only thing. So think about...
Well,
For our European fans, the meter stick.
I was gonna make an inching ahead joke, and you beat me to it.
Imperial just sounds like a much better system, but Metric's a good band, and I'll listen to them from time to time. Okay, so with that, I have been your host, and I will be the one to start this one off. I am your host, Pumpken. Thank you for talking to me, and also Saker, aka Dimmsdale.
Hey, goodbye forever. Bye.
Goodbye forever.
Until the next
Unsubscribe. That's the last one. Good job.
Yep.
21 in.
This was a fun run, guys.
Canceled just like Longmire.
I just looked it up.
And I was punking you. I'm just kidding.
No.
No, not
Why am I
really.
knowing?
I don't know. And also,
I do know. I'm sorry. Go ahead. God damn it.
Pack made in Manhattan. It's Todd Ogredose.
See you along the dusty trail, partner.
And as always, Anna Cranberry.
It's been wonderful. Thanks for listening to this very first episode of Utropeia Podcast.
February
22nd.
21st.
You said it, Bill, Mr.
I
You
know that.
Video.
Damn it. With all of this, from the start of this, learning the games, the West became in the West, so remember the name.
I love the secret ability.
And in the light of the full moon, we say goodnight to Chris Moonjump.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and go watch the Knowledge Trilogy.
Did they
will
pay
not
you?
regret it.
$1?
It's full of dollars.
We trope y'all found what you're looking for. And until we conversate geek next half a fortnight, so long, partners.
So
Hey,
long.
yo.
You're gonna put your neck up, I said Fortnite.
So-